Good evening, and welcome to What's Your Story? I'm your host, James Ransom Reed Jr. I have a very special guest with me. We're going to tape part 3 of this interview. And if you missed the first 2, oh boy, you better catch up on them. My very special guest is Mrs. Justine Ginsberg. Today, we're going to get into, with this part of the interview, what she does, why she does it, and why she will not stop until she drops. Isn't that right, Justine?
You got it.
All right. Welcome to the show, Justine.
Thank you, Jim.
Welcome. All right. You said to me September 11th changed the trajectory of your life. What does that mean?
Well, I think my youngest son is a history major.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Oh, really? There you go. So we often talk about, those waypoints in history that, if this hadn't happened, then what would not have happened after that?
Yeah,
like the butterfly effect, the what ifs.
Yeah.
And I think most of us can, look back at our family history and say, well, if that event, if World War I hadn't happened, then this wouldn't have come, and then I wouldn't have met that person, and so on and so forth. September 11 changed the trajectory of my life in the sense that I was, because of that event and because of what that event meant for my ex-husband's career and where the trajectory that took him, therefore myself and our sons, I ended up in Eastern Europe at the time that I left our marriage and was trying to rebuild my life with our sons and trying to work out what on earth I was going to be and how I was going to continue on in the world. And if it hadn't been for September 11, then I wouldn't have been in Eastern Europe. I would have been back in Australia or somewhere else. So that alone has changed the fact that I'm sitting here across a desk from you in Farmington, Connecticut, instead of being in Australia, probably still clinically nursing as an intensive care specialist, which is what I was doing before I began my globe-trotting. So when I was in Eastern Europe and my marriage had fallen apart and I was divorced, I had done a lot of work with a therapist, and hence the mental health part of my career. So therapists were something I'd always been very frightened of, because when you're dealing with intimate partner violence, the moment you start to speak that out loud, it becomes real. So it's not just your lived experience. You kind of try to keep the lid on that and keep up the illusion that everything's fabulous. But the moment you confide that in another person, you actually have to face the fact that it's actually happening. So I did a lot of work with a series of mental health professionals that helped me to get to the point that I am today. And one of those mental health professionals was doing a lot of work on rebuilding women's self-esteem and working with women and helping them when they had survived a unhealthy relationship to rebuild their self-confidence and self-worth. And as part of this experiment, she was having women use, back in the early 2010 was when all of this happened, using online dating as a way of being able to control a conversation and shut it down. Just dipping your toe in the water without physically ever having to meet anybody or engage in any type of high-risk activities.
There you go.
But just learning to converse. And I think back in 2010, the online dating world was a little different to what it is now. And I did this 6-week experiment and decided that it really wasn't for me. And it was actually on the very last day, as I was about to pull my profile, that I connected with my now husband. So I would definitely not be here if it had not been for September 11.
Wow. Now that in and of itself
is a story.
Oh, wow. Now, you are the Community Health Coordinator for the Farmington Valley Health District.
Correct.
What is the Farmington Valley? What is that?
So the Farmington Valley is a beautiful little collection of towns in partially rural Connecticut. So we span the 10 towns of the Farmington Valley, which include Avon, Barkhamsted, Farmington, Canton, I'm always going to miss somebody out, Granby, East Granby, Avon, Simsbury, Colebrook, New Hartford, and Heartland. I think that's 10. I think I got them
Wow.
all.
Okay.
That wasn't bad. So these wonderful 10 towns that have a population of about 110, 111,000 people are represented by our health department, so Farmington Valley Health Department. And it is our privilege to be able to serve the citizens of the Farmington Valley, and we provide the public health services that include the things that most of you at home know about. If you are on a well or you have a septic system, if you're building something, you need to have health department approval. Your restaurants are inspected by us. We do a lot of disease surveillance, just as the bread and butter of what we do. The community health side of the local public health is really about identifying the risk factors that create disease and mortality and morbidity in humans. So we often say public health is cradle to grave. So from the moment you're born to the moment we send you to whatever comes next, public health is in some way involved. And from a community health perspective, I have been very fortunate. I was the first community health coordinator for the Farmington Valley. And when I started 10 years ago, it was just me, working with our health director, Jennifer Katanis, building a community health team. And today we have 5 community health employees. We have an epidemiologist. We have assistant directors, we have community health associates, so we have been able, and a community health nurse, so we've been able to build a robust team that really wraps around the health and well-being of our population.
How are you funded?
So we are partially funded by the local state government. We've got some federal funding that comes through and usually gets passed through the...
You mean the 10 local towns each?
And then we're also funded by a per capita payment that happens from the 10 towns. So we are employed, for want of a better word, by the 10 towns to provide the local public health provisions. And then we also have grant funding.
Yeah, COVID must have driven you nuts.
I think anybody who meets me now, because I'm the one at the office who has the strange accent, if they find out where I work and they listen to my voice, they say, I spoke to you through COVID. So the community health team led the COVID outbreak investigations, and we spoke to, I think, every human in the Farmington Valley who ever had COVID, which means I think we spoke to 111,000 people. Wow. Yeah.
So describe...
It was a rough 2 years.
Describe your work day. What do you... You travel, you give seminars, you give trainings. What do you do?
All of the above. I am so fortunate to be able to be in a job that I love as much as I do. I don't know that I should actually call it work most of the time, because I love my team, I love my job, I love my community, and my job is varied. I start my days with usually a jam-packed diary. I do a lot of teaching and training. I do a lot of program development. I do a lot of community outreach, so doing shows like this, being able to talk to people and help people to understand the relevance of public health and community health. That is the bread and butter of what I do. And then I get all these other exciting opportunities to go and talk at national symposiums and create amazing programs with grant funding, and use the creativity of our team to be able to develop programs and community outreach that really does change the lives of the people who live in the Farmington Valley. So
how do you track or chart your success?
Well, we have a wonderful epidemiologist, Olivia Morris, who actually does that for us. And, it is quite a luxury to have an epidemiologist on staff. And Olivia's job really is to look at the health patterns that are emerging in our community and evaluate the programs that we are providing. Are they reducing morbidity? Are they reducing mortality? Are we shifting the needle? And it's sometimes very hard to measure when you are talking about qualitative data versus quantitative data. How do you prove that a person's life is better if they have access to clean water and medical services and good food? How do you prove that? Our epidemiologists can tell you. We do a lot of data measurement and we do a lot of baseline evaluation, and we look at ourselves from the Farmington Valley's perspective compared to the state of Connecticut and then compared to the rest of the United States.
Yes.
We've just completed an assessment called a community health assessment, correct, that looks at our positioning on the main data points compared to Connecticut and the United States. And from that, we have convened a group of experts, subject matter experts, across the main priority areas to create a thing called a community health improvement plan. And that's really the roadmap for us as a health department for the next 5 years. And in any accredited health department, and we're in the process of becoming accredited, that community health assessment and community health improvement plan are vital to be able to see what are the underlying challenges and where are we falling short. And then how do we address bridging that gap? How do we move the needle so we can see progress and our population is healthier and is moving towards better data points, healthier data points, where we exceed the state in a positive way rather than a negative way. So we have 3 main areas that emerged from our community health assessment. One of them is healthy eating and active living, ensuring that our population have access to good, healthy, nutritious food that they can afford and know what to do with, have access to exercise and areas where they can move and move safely and, really preserve their physical fitness and really look at how do we keep people's body mass in a healthy range so that we reduce the risk of chronic disease. We also mental health emerged as actually the number 1 challenge in our population.
I was going to say, let's talk about mental health. Wow.
And believe me, mental health is the number 1 priority across the nation. It's not
Is
just
it really
the Farmington Valley.
It's really as serious as we're led to believe.
Absolutely. And the final piece is our elderly population, so 65 plus, and how do we thrive through the ages? How do we ensure that from the time we're retiring right up until we reach the end of our life, how do we keep people independent, living at home, being safe, feeling connected to other people, addressing that epidemic of loneliness that we're seeing in our population? So they're those 3 main areas.
Mental health.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's my number 1 priority. Where do we begin?
Yeah.
So I think maybe starting with discussing the fact that Farmington Valley Health District has been very fortunate. In 2015, we received a grant from the Movember Foundation where we received nearly $1.5 million to build a men's mental health initiative that focused on the mental health and well-being of the men and women that served in the military, and specifically a men's mental health program because, as we know, there is a lot of stigma that's associated with men asking for help. So I was very fortunate to be able to be the project lead in developing an amazing program called Resilience Grows Here that I think many folks in the Farmington Valley start to now associate with mental health. And it was an amazing success. And we were able to touch the lives of many veterans and their families. We did amazing work with the National Guard and the 103rd Airlift Wing, really being able to embed a lot of evidence-based mental health prevention trainings into the community and really educating our communities, because the men and women that serve our country come back to communities, not programs. So we learned early that if you educate a community in mental health literacy, you begin to shift the needle for people being able to talk about their mental health without fear of judgment and stigma. So we started that work in 2015. We were, I think, the first health district in Connecticut to have any mental health programming. We were ahead of the national curve in talking about mental health being a public health priority. And now in 2024, it is widely acknowledged that mental health is a public health problem.
It's a crisis, is
absolutely. And, you know, if you think about us as human beings, there's nothing about us There's nothing about our behaviors or our engagement with life and work and love and play that doesn't involve our attitude and how we feel about it. If you're going to create a program that looks at how do we get people moving more, we have to look at health behaviors, and health behaviors are about the psychology of what motivates us and what allows us to keep doing things. So mental health is central to everything we do.
What are some of the signs to look out for in terms of people suffering from mental illnesses?
So I think one of the things, Jim, to talk about is the fact that in this country, it takes on average 11 years for a person who begins to show the signs and symptoms of a mental health challenge that is beginning to become invasive in their everyday life. I often say that people are made up with 4 L's, our ability to live, love, laugh, and learn. They're the attributes that make us human. We all have them, and they're the things that when those 4 bits are in alignment, we're usually doing reasonably well. And you can have poor luck in love, but still have close relationships with people in your life. Or you can be out of work and not really have found the thing that you love doing, but you're still actively engaged in something. So you can navigate your way comfortably through life like that. But when you have an underlying mental health challenge that might be depression or anxiety, or you could be struggling with intimate partner violence, or you might be struggling with intrusive thoughts, or any number of signs and symptoms. People can go for up to 11 years before they tell somebody that that's what's going on in their lives. So by the time we find out that a person is struggling, we're usually at a crisis point. So in a system that's actually poorly engineered, where we do reactive work, we're now reacting to a lot of people whose ability to live, love, laugh, and learn has been so dramatically affected. Their relationships are suffering, their work life is suffering, their enjoyment factor in life is suffering, and their ability to learn and engage and grow is suffering. So that person, in order to return back to a healthy state for them, it's a lot of work. So the sooner we're able to do that, the easier that person's return to the activities that they gain enjoyment and pleasure from, and their ability to thrive in life happens.
How do you feel about your successes in that area? You think we're making any changes whatsoever?
I think we're doing a lot of really good work, and the things that really encourage me is when I look at our schools in the Farmington Valley, and I look at the amount of work that we've done with our schools. And I'm going to shout out to 3 of my early subscribers. The Canton school system, the East Granby school system, and the Granby school system have been early partners with us in building a resiliency program that is taught in the schools. It's called Resilience Grows Here, and it really looks at how do we grow healthy humans? How do we build all of those healthy life skills and resilient characteristics that give us the best toolbox to cope with all the challenges that we know life is going to throw at us? You know, things happen to everybody. Life is guaranteed to be bad some days. You know, you can't escape that piece.
No rose garden.
No rose garden. So if we raise healthy young people, we have a better chance of having those healthy young people become healthy, bigger people who are able to navigate those challenges in life and able to self-identify when they're struggling and ask for help without feeling that they're going to be judged or that there's stigma associated, and then navigate their way back through to what their healthy and normal looks like so that their lives are not adversely affected.
Terrific.
So I think we've made a lot of progress because we now have many other schools in our 10 towns that are beginning to join that crusade. Our schools in Simsbury and our schools in Avon are actively working to increase the understanding of their staff and their parents and their students about the importance of mental health, and that it's a cornerstone to raising healthy humans. And there should be no shame and no blame if a person is having a bad day. It's okay not to be okay.
It's okay not to be okay.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm going to put a halt to us right here.
Okay.
And we're going to come back and get into drug addiction and how you're handling and working with that.
Okay, some great programs.
All right, very good. I'm your host, James Ransom Reed Jr., and this is What's Your Story. Stay tuned for the next part of my interview with Mrs. Justine Ginsberg. Good night.
Sometimes life just happens. Don't worry. Farmington Motorsports will get you back on the road and at a fair price. From towing to tires, emissions to transmissions.
Our ASC certified techs do it all.
Farmington Motorsports is a family-run business. We're a Napa Auto Center and AAA approved. We work on all makes and models from preventative maintenance to major repairs.
And every repair is backed by our 2-year, 24,000-mile nationwide warranty.
When life happens to you, don't worry. Farmington Motorsports.
Follow us on Instagram at nutmeg.tv.